Okay, so here is a follow-up video to the video I did that's titled Stop Watching Narcissism Videos, which got a weirdly high number of views, mainly from people within the narcissism community who watch a lot of narcissism videos. Maybe because it's got like a counterintuitive title, it makes people go, oh, I wonder what this guy's got to say. So it's a follow-on video where I wanted to clarify a couple of points, and I want to offer you an alternative way of thinking about this whole thing. But first of all, I want to tell you a little personal story that gives you a context as to why I want you to escape this whole thing, because I didn't, and it cost me a lot of pain and a lot of time. And it was a really torturous experience, and it didn't need to be. In my case, I don't know what happened in my last relationship. I'll probably never know the truth of exactly what went where and who was doing what to whom. And maybe that's just life. Maybe that's just the way it is. I was accused in the comments by some people of making an armchair diagnosis. I've never done that. I've only ever said, I think if a psychiatrist was there, or I think if a mental health professional who's qualified to diagnose was there, this is what they would say. And before I shot this video this morning, there's something that I've forgotten, which is in the case of that individual, she made me go to therapy. And both of the therapists, because she said that the problem was mine, that I had the problem, both therapists that she forced me to go to said that they thought that she would be on the spectrum for narcissistic personality disorder. One was a therapist who was working with me just for me, and the other one was actually a couples counsellor that we had gone to. Why am I telling you this? The reason I'm telling you this is because I actually think all of us, the therapists, her and myself, were sort of stuck in the same trap. It's a verbal trap and it's a psychological trap. But here's the torture that I want you to avoid. I spent, in the end, years longer in that relationship than I should have done, trying to figure out a sort of a binary answer, a 1 or a 0. Is this girl NPD or not? And even with those mental health professionals' opinions, even when they told me, she'd forced me to go to these sessions, and they told me there was no closure. There was no closure because two reasons. A, it's not a universally agreed upon diagnosis. If you think for more than a couple of minutes about what we're saying when we say somebody is a narcissist or they have NPD, you can quite clearly see that there's immediately you start tripping over the idea that it's a personality disorder. I released a video about this. Trump inspired me to release a video about this back in 2016 because I can't remember his name, I'm sorry, but he was the leader of the team of people in the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, Volume 5. There was 19 people, and he was the boss of them. I can't remember the dude's name. And they did the section on Cluster B. There was a council, if you like, of 19 experts, and he led them. And he was saying, Trump can't have NPD because he's doing well and he's successful. So that stuck with me, and when I looked in the manual, I read the section of the manual page by page, paragraph by paragraph. It was actually self-contradictory. If a person is successful in their lives, do they have a personality disorder? If a person is doing what they want to do, is that a personality disorder? The term in the literature is maladaptive. And if a person is maladaptive, can you just be hurting other people and be doing very well yourself and be considered maladaptive? The guy who almost literally, it wasn't just him on his own, but almost literally wrote the DSM definition for DSM-5 of NPD said, Trump can't be a narcissist because he's succeeding. So it's not maladaptive. But if you read the definition in the DSM, it contradicts itself from one page to the next. So it's a problematic diagnosis. The second element of it is it really doesn't matter. It's actually a red herring. And I don't want you to get stuck in the way that I was stuck in this endless search for the binary. What's the binary? The binary is she is or she isn't. She's like Schrodinger's cat at this point. She's going to come out the box an NPD or come out the box somebody with PTSD from a war zone. In one version of reality, she's unsalvageable, doesn't want help, and in the other one, she's a victim and does. And you might think, yeah, of course, that makes sense. So in one scenario, you're trying to figure out, does she deserve compassion and years of therapy, which you're going to stand by her through? Or do you just say, okay, this thing is over? Let me get to why it's a total red herring in a second. I want to say something here that I've not heard people say in these videos in the online narcissism community. I really loved her. I really was in love with her. I really wanted it to work. I wanted to be with her for life. Or at least I wanted to be with one version of her. I wanted to be with the person that she could sometimes show up as. And so maybe we're all shy to say that. Maybe we don't want to be vulnerable. Maybe we don't want to be vulnerable in a public space. That makes perfect sense. You know, you can't deride somebody for not wanting to be private in a public space, to not want to be vulnerable in a public space. But when we don't say those words, we're missing a big piece of the puzzle. You are probably like me. Not everybody, but the majority of people. If you're seeking for this answer, you're still in love. Not trauma bonded, not using the lingo, in love. In love. I was in love. I wanted it to work. But she was really, really horrible to me in a way that fucked me up psychologically, emotionally, and ultimately physically. But I still clung on because love is strong, loyalty is strong, and I really, really loved her. And love was its own reason. So through everything that happened, I still wanted it to work. We have to admit that. And we have to say, if you're in a situation where you love somebody, but the level of abuse that they have brought your way has got you stuck in an endless loop of trying to find the binary 1 or the 0 so that you can be released and say, okay, if this person, if my husband has NPD, if my wife is a psychopath, whatever, then I can leave. It's a red herring. It's a red herring. You're still stuck. I got as close to an answer as anybody watching this is going to get. She pushed me to go to these 2 mental health professionals, and both of them told me privately, you know, it's not very professional. I know they're not supposed to, but they could see what was going on. You know, I'm sat on the couch in front of them twitching, and they both told me personally, this is my opinion. They're not specialists. Neither of them are personality disorder specialists. Neither of them were psychiatrists. But they said, based on their understanding, this person has narcissistic personality disorder. So that's almost as good as you're going to get, unless you get psychiatrists. I had 2, you could get 3. And so then you go, oh, it's slightly better. And in a scientific sense, I would agree with you. Yes, scientifically speaking, you could get a little bit better. Most of us will never get that. I got that. You know what difference it made to me emotionally? 0. Nothing. It didn't affect me emotionally at all. It gave me no relief. It gave me 0 release. It gave me 0 freedom. It didn't allow me to take my agency back. Why? Because this whole subject, this whole topic is a kind of an absolution of agency, not post hoc, pre hoc, de facto. What we're saying is, something bad happened to me. I don't understand it. I'm in a lot of pain. I want to know what it is. In the comments to the last video, so many people said to me, but Richard, I'm saying, I don't think I've done a good thing here. And people saying, no, you've done a great thing because you've raised awareness. I don't know that raising awareness of a red herring is particularly helpful. And they also said, kindly, you know, people are being kind. They're being nice to me. They're saying, I didn't know what happened to me. You gave me words to understand it. And I would say, yes. I mean, I didn't create the online narcissism community. Relatively speaking, I'm a total newcomer. You can go back through my videos. You can see it's not hidden. I've not tried to present myself as an expert. I'm a guy who learned about this as he went along and realized through talking to other people about it that I was in that same situation. Words. You've been given words. You've been given descriptions, and it's not helping you. Let me qualify that statement. You go online, you watch videos about narcissism and videos about mental health, and I'm telling you it's not helping you. And you would say, but subjectively, Richard, that's not my experience. I am being helped. And I would say this. If by helped, we mean it helps you to feel more in control. If by helped, we mean soothed. If by helped, we mean we have ourselves cause to feel a little bit better, then yes, it's helped you in that agenda. I've never wanted to do that for people. Never. The idea of using YouTube videos to soothe you, well, if I soothe you, I can easily, my imagination's pretty good, I can easily imagine a scenario where a man, a woman, a person, a human being comes for resolution in an abusive relationship, watches a few videos, I soothe them, and they just go back into the relationship. I don't want to soothe people. Sometimes I want to agitate people into action. And so people get angry with me, like, your attitude is aloof and it's arrogant. And I'm like, well, if I feel like you're attaching in a negative way to me or to a subject, there isn't a very easy way of making you let go of that teat that you've got clamped between your teeth that you won't experience as negative or aggressive or confrontational. Because you've got a thing that you want more of, and I'm saying, no, you're not to have that anymore. Of course I'm going to look like a bad guy, but I'm willing to be the bad guy. This is a bind. So that's the torture I want to save you from. Don't do it. If you're sat thinking it's zeros and ones, if he's an NPD and I could just know he's NPD, then I'll give up. But if he's not NPD and he's just a wounded boy and maybe it's borderline personality disorder and some alcoholism, some PTSD, we could go to therapy and everything will be okay. Let me offer you another way out. Forget the American Psychiatric Association. Forget Cluster B altogether. We are all talking about it as though, you know, Moses has come down from the mountain with a tablet written with God's fingertip about what these things are. They're models for understanding behavior. And they're models for understanding behavior that have absolution. There's a religious component to this, which really bothers me. And I think I've been going back and forth on this subject with Sam Vaknin since 2014. You can see there's a video in 2014 where we're talking about why is there narcissism in the narcissism community? Because there's a religious component to all this. There's magical thinking that holds all of this together. And he was the one who introduced me to the concept, or many concepts within narcissism. I mean, most of what I know about the structure of narcissism, I know from Sam Vaknin. He taught me about projective identification, and he taught me about culture-bound syndromes. This is a culture-bound syndrome. 100%. Like, in different cultural settings, the term narcissism would have zero meaning. None. It would be utterly meaningless. Therefore, does it make sense for us to prop up the structure that says this person has NPD if in a different cultural environment it wouldn't exist at all? We wouldn't even see it. It wouldn't be there. It couldn't survive. Let me give you an alternative, because you can't escape the academic world. It just goes round and round the houses because it's operating on circular logic. Remember that the American Psychiatric Association summons these disorders into being magically. Magically. They vote like a group of wizards and witches in a fucking Harry Potter school for the existence of goblins and spirits. There's no blood test, there's no neurotransmitters, there's no urine test that says, here's borderline personality disorder, and it's completely discrete from histrionic personality disorder. And it's totally divided, totally unrelated to the prejudices of the person who came up with the concept, of the country where the concept is propagated, of the implicit coordinates, the cultural coordinates. There's even gender issues that we can clearly see, just basic gender issues that we can clearly see within the definition of the personality disorders. So I think in wanting you to move on, I would just say, okay, maybe it's time. I'm not saying abuse doesn't occur. My God. I'm not saying exploitation doesn't occur. That would be insane. But what I am saying is, if you, like me, were in love with somebody who treated you badly, and you're in the binary, is it a 1, is it a 0? You're playing Schrodinger's cat. If they are MPD, I'll leave. If they're not, I'll try and make this work. Let me offer you a different model, because the model that the American Psychiatric Association gives you is kind of magical. It's not really, it's not science. None of psychology is real science. It can't be. It tries to be scientific, which it should, because that's responsible. But if you've ever run a psychology experiment, why would you? I had to. I was forced to run my own psychology experiment, and because we were students working together, in order to pass my degree, I had to help at least 10 other experiments to run as well, either as a subject or I'm actually helping them run the experiment themselves. It's laughable. It's fucking laughable. The things that we do and that we say to get from the beginning of an experiment to the end of an experiment, okay, we were students at university, but the premise of these psychology experiments, when you say, where's the peer-reviewed research? Go and read some peer-reviewed research and look at the methodology. With open eyes, pick any psychology experiment at random, any, and look at the methodology. Give yourself 2 minutes and a strong cup of coffee, and I want you to come up with one rock-solid criticism of the methodology. You will find one. They're easy to find. They're the easiest things in the world to pick holes in. So if we go the academic route, I would claim you're lost. There's no escape, because there's nothing there. It's like trying to enter a palace of mirages. There's nothing there but what people summon into existence with words. So what you're being given is words. You're being given descriptions. Yes, when you consume rational sounding descriptions, it might make you feel safer, it might make you feel calmer, but I don't believe it's actually helping you to move on. I don't think it is. That field is going to end up, I think, becoming a battle of who is the most qualified, and I don't think anybody will ever be qualified enough. To do what? It's wizardry, in a certain sense. It's not useless. I'm not saying it's useless, and I'm not saying there aren't good people in the field, and I'm not saying a process that looks like narcissistic abuse doesn't occur. If you're asking me from a more academic point of view, what I think we're describing behaviors, not personalities. Yes, there are certain personalities who rely on these behaviors more than others across different contexts, but passing that from trauma, from PTSD and CPTSD, well, I've been trying to do it. I'm not a professional. I'm an amateur in these things, but I'm not stupid. I've been trying to do it for 4 years and I can't. I can't tell you where the line is between someone is traumatized and they're responding defensively to get what they want, and this is this thing that's called narcissistic personality disorder or psychopathy. Can't do it. Who can? Does anybody want to make a claim in the comments that they can? How do you do it? Can you show me a person who can do it? Tell me a name. Write down a name. Give me a research paper of a person who can do it. Show me their methodology. How? It's impossible to pass exactly where the discrete boundaries are between concepts and words. These aren't like particles and waveforms, or it's not chemistry, it's not mathematics. They're just words, they're ideas. They're stories, in a sense. They're not stories, but they're little chunks of narrative. You read the DSM, you're reading a narrative. There's a description for what narcissistic personality disorder tends to play out as. rightly or wrongly, with different bits and pieces we could add or subtract or whatever. But really, it's only a question of one wizard coming along and being able to summon into being this entity better or more skillfully or in a more interesting way than another wizard. And those are the wars that you have. That's the peer-reviewed research that everybody's talking about. And I say, okay. It's not science with a capital S. It's not really a science at all. So if you go down that route, I think it's a dead end in and of itself. It's a snake swallowing its own tail in and of itself. When we use the term purely academic, it means it's interesting, I think. If I say, well, that's interesting, but it's purely academic, it means it's interesting, it's intellectually stimulating, but it doesn't make any difference. Here's my alternative model. If you're playing the Schrodinger's cat game, if you're in binaries, ones and zeros, what's it going to be? Do I leave or it's like The Clash, the song by The Clash. Do I stay or do I go? Here's a different model. Ask yourself the question, is the person emotionally abusive? You can never know for certain if somebody has NPD, like they have a virus, or ASPD or HPD or whatever. You can't, because you're not a qualified clinician. Qualified clinicians don't really know with certainty. They sort of say, well, it's on a spectrum, it appears to be, it could be comorbid with this, comorbid with that, but they don't really know. They don't know in the hard, rock-solid scientific sense. They just can conjecture. Doesn't make it worthless. I'm not saying they're idiots or slobs or charlatans or something. They're not. They're genuine people, for the most part, I believe, who really think they're trying to do something that's of use. But anybody can identify emotional abuse. That's not going to keep you awake at night until 3 a.m, scratching your head and trying to watch YouTube videos. Like, you just ask yourself the question, is this loving behavior? No. Did I tell this person to stop doing it? Yes. Are they still doing it? Yes. Okay, it's emotional abuse. Why am I saying emotional abuse? Well, physical abuse, you know what physical abuse is because it either happened or it didn't. That's not hard to detect. Emotional abuse is a little bit harder, which is why you just ask the questions that I just gave you. Is this loving behavior? No. Okay. Does this person know that it hurts me? Have I told them? Have I actually said to them, I don't want you to do that? Yes. Houston, you have a problem. You're now in the realm of emotional abuse. And then some of you will say, aha, but my partner doesn't agree with me. Okay. So the second thing, keeping this really simple, boundaries. Just think in terms of boundaries. You have boundaries. Your boundaries may be weak, they may be porous, they may be this, they may be that. You might not be good at asserting boundaries. You might not be good at knowing what your boundaries are, but you have them. If your boundaries are weak, when people are abusive, they will get away with it. If your boundaries are strong, when people are abusive, they won't get away with it. Okay? So it's a boundary issue. If I've told you, I don't want you flirting with other men in the bar. If you've told me you don't want me liking other girls' photos on Instagram or whatever couples argue about in 2020, it's always the same thing. It's nearly always going to be about mate guarding, trying to guard your own territory. If it's narcissistic abuse in the workplace, there's only a certain number of ways that that's going to play out. If it's in a family unit, from parents to children or grandparents to whatever it is, it's the same set of questions. Is this emotionally abusive? Is this person being kind to me? Is this what love looks like? Are they supporting me or are they attacking me? Anybody can get that. You don't need a psychiatrist. You don't need a PhD to figure that one out. And the second point is this a boundary for me? If it is a boundary for me, how hard of a boundary is it? I've told you not to flirt with guys in the bar, but you're still doing it. If that's a hard boundary for me, then there will be a consequence to that person still engaging in that action. If it's a soft boundary for me, please don't do it. And then they still do it, and then I stick around, and there's no consequence. Boundaries are always a no, and they are enforced with consequences. They have to be. So where are your boundaries? You get to define them. There are no children watching this. There are 0 children watching this. So We can't say, no, but my issue is from childhood. Well, you're not a child now. You're an adult now. So you get to determine your boundaries are your rules. These are my rules for family life. These are my rules for health. These are the rules that I set with myself, because there are internal boundaries. These are the rules I set with other people. These are external boundaries. And then what you can do is you can go back to your last relationship in your mind and you can say, was this emotionally abusive? There's a good question based on the questions I've just given you. And you should be able to say, yeah, I think it was actually. I told that person I didn't like it and that it hurt me. What they were doing was not loving when they would come home and call me names and sulk for days on end or throw things around and frighten me. That's not love. That was emotional abuse, as distinct to physical abuse, which nobody has any doubts about because you're being hit or somebody's chucking something at you. And then the second part of that would be to say, well, did I assert my boundaries with that person? Did I actually say to them, stop, don't do that? Having said to them, stop, I don't want you to do that, when they continued doing it, what was the consequence? If the answer to those two questions is, no, I didn't tell them to stop, and no, I didn't do anything about it, that's a boundaries issue. You want to recover from your last relationship? Maybe it's time to say, okay, the narcissistic abuse thing was interesting, but actually what I'm recovering from is heartache. And that's tough. If you love somebody and they treated you like shit, it ruins your confidence. Heartache is tough on its own. Heartache after an abusive relationship means that you're doing heartache whilst feeling really bad about yourself because somebody's kicked your confidence in. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about being in emotionally abusive relationships where your confidence was wrecked because you loved the person and they responded to your love with a kind of terrorism or bullying, whereby it would the terrorism or bullying because what would be held to ransom is your love. What's held hostage is your love. You're going to do as I say or else I'll leave you. You're going to do as I say or else I'll cheat on you. You're going to do as I say or I'll fire you and you won't be able to pay your mortgage. You're going to do as I say or I'll disown you as my child. I'm staying away from physical stuff for this video. It's really simple, folks. If you're heartbroken, then your issue is recovering from heartache. Hard for any human being to do. If your confidence is being kicked in by an emotionally abusive person, then let's just say my confidence is battered. My confidence is battered and I'm heartbroken. Okay, now we can start telling the truth. We can stop hiding behind lingo. We can stop hiding behind really fuzzily defined psychiatric terms. That's not weird niche conspiracy theory talk. You don't believe me? Go and ask a mental health professional. Why do you think so many mental health professionals either don't know about narcissism or if they do, they don't want to talk to you about it? Because it's a very fuzzy, hazy area without, and to be quite honest, nobody really knows what to do about it. But I think this is a better model. Was I in an emotionally abusive relationship? Where were my boundaries? Did I set them? And moving forward into the future, can I set my boundaries differently with somebody? Can I make sure I'm not in an emotionally abusive relationship again? Yes. What protects you from an emotionally abusive relationship in the future? Boundaries, rules. If I'm going to text you and you're not going to text me back, or you're going to speak to me this way, or you're going to do this in this scenario with these people, or if it's a boss and your boss does this with you, or if it's a partner or wherever it is, they're your rules. They're your rules. You have a choice to do something. You can A, set your own rules, and B, you get to set what you do about it. Boundaries are internal and they're external. You must set boundaries with yourself. You must set boundaries with other people. That's called being an adult. So if you're walking around in a passive infantile state, like a jellyfish, not even walking around, floating around, waiting to attach to somebody, and you don't take any responsibility, you refuse to develop a moral philosophy, you refuse to develop a sense for yourself of this is right, this is wrong, I want this, I don't want that, and then you say, oh, I keep getting in narcissistically abusive relationships, well, what do you expect? You're floating around waiting to plug into a stronger personality. I don't want to get into it in this video, but I'll just finish with this point. Another element of this that we have to start talking about is power dynamics. I've been hinting at it for years and I'm just going to tell you directly. We've got to talk about power. People in this community are power blind. You have to talk about power. Did that person have power over you? Were you the less powerful person in the relationship? Let's admit that. Let's have that conversation. I definitely was. I definitely felt like I needed the relationship more than she did. Okay, does that set the stage for somebody taking the piss? Yes, of course it does. Does that set the stage for somebody colouring outside the lines with their moods, with their demands, with their what they will do, what they won't do, how much truth they're going to tell, how honest with me, how disciplined they're going to be in their behaviour in the relationship? Of course it does. Of course it does. So we need to talk love, we need to talk heartache, we need to talk emotional abuse, and we need to talk boundaries. And then when we've done all that and we're ready, we need to talk power dynamics. If you get into a relationship with somebody where they're significantly more powerful than you, whatever the power paradigm, whatever the power coordinates are, money, looks, fame, wealth, whatever, of course you're more, I can see this is really going to upset some people, but be adult, be a realist. Of course you're more at risk for getting trampled on. The person's above you and you're below them. Even if it's not real, even if it's only inside of their head and your head, there is such a thing as a folie à deux. If you both believe in that created reality, it's as true for you as the sky being blue, because you're both living that reality. So it's true the way money and mortgages and phone bills are true. It's got truth in it. You live the truth. Whether it's some spiritual, metaphysical level, everybody's the same, nobody's better than anybody else. Yeah, fine, okay, that sounds cool to me. But how did you live? What truth were you living? Not the truth that you're speaking or the truth that you wish to be true in your utopian fantasy. What truth did you live? You were dragged around for years and trampled underfoot. Okay, that's a truth. Let's talk about that. I let a person, a couple of people in fact, get away with doing and saying really things that I'm very embarrassed about. Why? Because I was in love. Because I was in love and I didn't want to let go of the relationship. I didn't have the self-worth. I didn't have the value. I didn't have the boundaries to say, you know what? I'm not putting up with this. I don't need to be with you. I can do better than this. See you later. Goodbye. Because I didn't have that self-love and that self-worth, when the relationship terminated, my head was looking backwards to where they were the whole time, because I wasn't looking into the future. I wasn't looking to creating something better for myself, a better lifestyle, a better relationship, a better self-image in the future. So what did I do? I got back with them. Oh, it was the Hoover. We cycled through the idealization and discard phase. They hoovered me. Yeah, sure, they hoovered me. Fucking hell. I always laugh when people talk about hoovering. I can't help but see people with vacuum cleaners around the house. I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. You can come round and hoover at my house anytime you like. So we give it these weird terms, flying monkeys and all the rest of it, because what we're trying to do is mask pain. We're trying to mask vulnerability. So you want to get over this stuff? Just be real. Just be real. You probably got ripped off. You probably got trampled on by somebody who you'd put on a pedestal. We talk about the narcissists, they idealize us. Well, who's idealizing them? How did you let somebody get away with what they got away with if it wasn't physically violent? So you're not physically at death. That's a different conversation for a different day. If there's physical violence present, okay, we're in the realm of like, you got to talk self-protection and the police and legality. But we're not talking about that. So why did you let them get away with it? Why? Why did you let them get away with it unless they were up high on a pedestal being idealized by you? Who was love bombing? This term I hear all the time. Were they love bombing you or were you love bombing yourself? The tendency to want to abrogate all and any responsibility so that we are a completely blameless victim is very strong. The cultural moment that we're living through really encourages this. There is such a thing as the oppression Olympics. There is such a thing as wanting to be the biggest victim in the room. There is such a thing as wanting to absolve ourselves of responsibility so that we could say, well, I did nothing and they did everything. How could that be true? Rationally, use your mind, use your brain, use your mind. How could that be true? That they did, how? This is why you get these online narratives of narcissists and they sound like vampires or demons or they sound like mythical creatures. What, do they have the power to control your mind? And people say, yeah, they do. They control my mind. Did they? Or did you just not have the strength to say, I'm not putting up with that, and now I'm going to leave? They're two different scenarios. So these are the things I'd like you to think about. If the tone of the video is too harsh, too confrontational, puts you off, go watch another video, man. Like, I'm not playing this game with people anymore. I'm not here to comfort you. I've never been here to anesthetize you and keep you in a zombie-like state. I'm trying to wake you up. Yeah, it hurts sometimes. Oh, you're confrontational. Well, boo-hoo. If it saves you years of wasted life and you felt a bit grumpy after watching a 25-minute YouTube video, so be it. I think that's a perfectly fine trade-off. People are pissy with me online now. I'll pay that price. I think it's cool. It's the only way out. It's the only way out. You want to go further into academia, it's a hall of mirrors. You'll never leave. The only way out is to reclaim your own agency. Is to reclaim your own sovereignty. Know where you were weak. Know where you were strong. Make a simple, pure, clean, objective perception of where you are up to in your life. Know where you need to be stronger. Know where you need more skills, and then do something about it. Take action. Emotional abuse, yes or no? Boundaries, yes or no? Case closed. If a person is being emotionally abusive and you don't have the boundaries to stop them from doing that, the problem is no longer, are they NPD or not? Are they BPD or not? Are they clinical diagnosis XYZ or not? Because if we keep playing this game, we, the people, keep walking into the hall of mirrors, you know what the DSM is going to do? It's going to grow. Cluster B diagnosis in the next edition of the DSM, instead of being 4 different personality disorders, it'll be 8. It's already grown. It's growing year on every edition that comes out. It grows exponentially. And that's us. We're doing that because we're externalizing the locus of control. Ladies and gentlemen, my intent is to help, but not to help in a cosmetic way, to really help. So thank you very much for your time and for your attention. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon if you ever watch any of my YouTube videos ever again. Cheerio.